Welcome to The Solar Panel, the podcast focusing on all things ESG within the warehouse logistics and fulfillment sector. Joining me today to discuss the customer questions we've received in January relating to solar PV is an industry expert and my colleague from Perfect Sense Energy and ASG Energy Services, a fine chap called Ian Marr. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Tony. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, busy, man. Busy.
Of course, we're in solar. It's a bit mad.
Yeah, could say that. It's great to see, though. Deployment's up, inquiries are up, and people are asking all the right questions. And we're going to look at some of those today, I hope.
We are indeed. So let's get straight to it. Does PSE/ASG Energy use its own installers, or do we use subcontractors?
A really interesting question. Up until recently, PSE have managed to do everything that we've sold. We've installed ourselves through our own. We have our own company called Energize. However, with the addition of ASG to our sort of portfolio and the increase in solar, we've had to go out to the market and look for subcontractors.
So I guess the follow-up question is, what criteria do we have for selecting the right ones?
As an ethical business, we really started to look for subcontractors that mirrored our quality standards, our ethics, our customer service, and just our general way of being. And we settled on two, one that will cover the north and northeast for us, and then one that's covering the Midlands, both of which have become very close with us as a business, more of an informal partnership, and our growth is fueling their growth.
How many staff are there in the company? If you answer first for PSE, which is your side of the business here, and I'll answer for ASG Energy.
Absolutely, no problem. So we've grown significantly in the last 12 months. We're now up to 22 staff, with two more due to start in March, and then that will hopefully be the end of recruitment for a short period of time, and then our year starts again in May. So hopefully we'll be adding to the team when we move to our new offices. Good
stuff. That's a good number. Over here at ASG, we're sort of in a different building. We're over in Warrington. The existing sort of labelling and netting business currently employs 33 people, of which myself and two others are directly involved with energy. But we are going to increase that this year. We're going to start training other people across. That's one of our challenges for this year. Real great opportunity. But I suspect by Christmas-ish, we're probably somewhere in the 10 to 15 working on energy, I would suggest.
Good growth, nice and quick.
Plenty of demand there, as you well know.
It reflects the market.
Is solar considered a long life asset from an accounting point of view, Ian?
Mainly this sort of question stems from the annual investment allowance that's been in place since the pandemic, sometimes called a super deduction. So that was expanded from 200,000, 250,000 to over £1 million. So customers could procure equipment, capital, and be able to write down significant costs of that in year one. Solar was considered a long life asset, and as such was a special case. So what we've been able to do for quite a while for clients is provide them with a proposal that shows the benefit of the annual investment allowance additional costs. So you could write down 50% of the project value in year one, and then 6% year on year until it's written down over 20 years, I think it is. So yes, it is definitely a long life asset from tax purposes and in real life as well. When you install solar, you're buying something that's going to be with you for 20 plus years and providing benefit for 20 plus years. So on both sides of that coin, yes, solar is a long life asset.
Ian, what is the warranty length on an inverter?
Out of the box, the Solis inverters that we use, they come with a 5-year manufacturer's sort of standard warranty. But because we don't just fit and forget, we stand and stay with the customer for a while, we automatically increase the warranty of the inverters to 10 years. We do that as a gesture. We know the equipment's going to last that long, and we'll be in the background looking at maintenance and monitoring packages to ensure that the warranties are up to date, etc., etc. It is the bit of equipment that, being honest, will potentially need to be replaced during the life of a system. So if we can make that replacement as long as period as possible, then it keeps the cost down.
Moving on to the next question then, Ian. What is included in the OEM package after installation?
Okay, well, following on from the last question, I guess that's a nice segue. We have an O&M package, operation and maintenance package. That at the very base level, we have a monitoring system that looks at the panels, looks at the building, and looks at the interaction between solar PV and the current consumption. And that's done over the internet through a portal. Customer gets access to that information as well. We don't hide it. So it shows what the system's generating, what the building's consuming, and whether there's grid feed-in or grid export, depending on the system at the time. Behind that, we will give a report done by the lovely Emily, who will report every 3 months on what the system output's been. And we report on that versus our proposal. So as you can see, as a client that we said you'd generate 200,000 kilowatts in this quarter, you've actually generated 210. So you're 5% up. I think that's right, maths. That also then leads into an annual inspection. That's an inspection of the AC cabling, the inverters and the DC cables, a visual inspection of the roof by drone, which makes things a lot easier.
All very modern.
Yes, and it sort of feeds into sort of our workmanship guarantees, which I think we'll touch on later, but it also keeps the inverter in its tip-top condition, making sure that it's clean, it's, you know, the fans are free from dust, etc., etc. So it sort of keeps that 10 years warranty as well, which is a valuable asset. It's worth a good £3,500, I think, to a client.
Good stuff. Who does the export energy contract sit with, and how does it work?
Okay, so just to be clear, the energy export contract is the client's contract. So that's a contract entered into with the client and the off-taker of the power. It's the same as your normal energy contract, but the relationship's in reverse. So you're selling power back to Drax rather than buying power from Drax. The actual facilitation of that is done by us. We're a TPI, we're an energy broker as well, so we can negotiate with these people. The way it works after install, so your system is generating power, and we've got the final commissioning documentation. We can go back to the DNO and say this 200 kilowatt system on this warehouse in Sale is now operational. They're exporting power. We need an export MPAN, and we need it with a generation meter as well. Once that's
sorry,
so,
go on. No, I thought you'd finished. Please carry on, young man.
No, I'm going to waffle on this one for a while. Once that's done, what we do is we use our design document that we will have shared with the client during the proposal process to say to the DNO, we've got 100,000 kilowatts per year that's going to be exported from this warehouse. We're going to go out to tender. Can you please give us your best price for either 12 months fixed or a flexible rate? The difference between those two rates are very similar to your normal energy contract. A fixed rate will get you a price for 12 months, typically round about 15p. Excuse me. But you can enter into a flexible package as well, depending how sort of risk averse you may be or not, as the case. So you can then go into a flexible basket, and your price can be anything up to sort of £2-3 a kilowatt at certain times of the day, or it can drop into minus. So you're paying to put power back into the grid. We generally put both in front of the client and go, there you go. which one do you feel most comfortable with? Most people go with a fixed 12 months. It's more budget certainty, as it were.
So just to summarise that one, because that's a very interesting answer. The exported energy sits in a contract between the end user in this particular situation, so the client, and a wholesaler. So not necessarily the company they buy their electric off. Is that right?
That's right. It goes out to the generators. So if you're dealing with a non-generator intermediary, your energy that you're selling back would go back to Drax or SSP. SSE, yeah. There's a few of them out there, and they're all bidding for power because they want their energy to be greener. So they're buying renewable power to green the grid. And there's probably a whole podcast in that question, that answer.
I shall make a note.
Yeah.
There's a follow-on question straight away. How confident are you at selling excess electricity back to a wholesaler in excess of 15p a kilowatt hour? Where does that 15p a kilowatt hour come from?
Okay, that question we generally get that question from when we're competing with another provider. So we've put our proposal together. We're going to put 200 kilowatts on this roof in Sale. I keep referencing this mythical roof in Sale.
It's because that's where I live. Is that what?
Yeah. Okay. So this mythical warehouse in Sale, and we've said you're going to get 15p for your export, but the other provider said you're going to get 7p. The reason for that is, as a TPI, as an energy broker, we're able to negotiate with the market. Whereas our competition, when they're just installing solar, they aren't able to do that. So they have to go with what's called the smart export guarantee, which is every energy provider, not just generators, but providers, they have to offer that. Whereas we can step outside of that smart export guarantee situation and take it to a wider market. And what we actually use is called an export PPA. It's a different mechanism entirely. So to answer the question, we're 100% confident we can get a much higher rate than the smart export guarantee, because we're not just providing solar PV, we're providing the energy services behind it as well.
But just to be clear, and bearing in mind, this podcast is about increasing people's sort of awareness and information.
Yeah.
If they did go with somebody else, they could then take a contract through a TPI and get 15p.
Exactly right. Yes.
Right. Okay, cool. Thank you. Can we get a green energy contract partway through our current supply contract? Well, I will answer that because I think I know.
Oh, go on.
I think I will answer that. If your current energy provider has a green product, the answer is yes. They will, I can't remember the name of the document, but there's a document to sign, and you can transfer your current supply contract to a green contract within the same company. Luke Rosen, who we've done a couple of podcasts with before, he's been through that with me because it cropped up on a job. There's a bit of documentation to do, but if you want to go away from your existing contract, that is not possible, but it is within the same provider.
Interesting. I've learned something. Thank you.
Can a system provide power on a building using a solar from a different roof? Oh, this was one we stumbled across last week, Ian.
It did, yes. And I'm actually talking to that client this afternoon. The general consensus from the DNO is no. They don't like power coming from one roof and then being fed into another roof. The main reason they give is for earthing issues and for emergency shutdown. It's a bit of a grey area, but the DNOs generally come back with a no, we don't want you to do this. From our point of view, physically it's possible, but it's not best practice, and it is a very difficult thing to pull off through the DNO application.
If the DNO is blocked or comes back with a reduced export limit, what options do people have?
Okay, so there's no option with regards to the decision from the DNO. The DNO, what they say goes. We can't appeal it. or appeal to their better nature because they don't have one. But what comes back is, going back to this warehouse in Sale, we've applied for 200 kilowatts on the roof. 80% is going to be self-consumed and 20% is going to be exported. If the DNO comes back and says, well, you need to limit the export to X, and that export limitation means the customer's going to lose some of that export income.
Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll remodel it. So we'll go back to the drawing board. We'll redo the system. We'll say 80% is going to be self-consumed, but now instead of 20% being exported, we're going to export 12%, and we'll recalculate that so the client sees what their ROI is going to be with that export limitation.
Here's a question from a landlord. If I put solar on the roof and sell power to my tenant under a PPA agreement, is a sub-meter installed to be able to measure the electricity supplied?
It depends on the way the building is fed, but in general, yes. We'll fit a generation meter as part of the install, and then that will measure through the monitoring that I spoke about earlier what the building is using, what the is being consumed and what's being exported. And then from that data, the landlord can see that the customer's used 100,000 kilowatts, so he needs to charge him for 100,000 kilowatts this month.
Good stuff. How long does it take to get the export MPAN number issued?
It really does depend on the DNO. They're very inconsistent. We've had some back in a matter of weeks, and others deferring to a 12-week SLA. So the Northwest is slow. The Southwest, the Southeast, and the Northeast are all really quick. So it just depends where you are. It is a bit of a lottery, I'm afraid, Tony.
Okay, no problem. For the 5-year workmanship warranty, would that include any needed maintenance, and what else is included on that?
Okay, so going back again, we covered a little bit of this, but expanding on that. So our 5-year workmanship warranty, we would like our own O&M contract to be in place. However, we will accept an approved other contract. We're not going to force you to work with us, but we'd like you to because we're great. And we would be on site every year doing an assessment of the cabling, as I said, and of the inverter. And we would be looking at the performance of the system remotely. So if the system did start to drop off generation outside of parameters, we would attend site and do any remedials. It's typically quite straightforward what we have to fix. It's not usually catastrophic breakdowns. It's a board goes or something that needs repairing, a bit like your home boiler. We turn up, we change a part, and we go away again, and everything works again. Yeah.
So it gets repaired rather than replaced.
Yeah.
Do you have all the equipment we need in stock? If not, when would you order them, and how long does it take to get them in?
The majority of equipment is stocked, yes. So panels, we're quite lucky in that we've been around for 13 years. So our supply chain is mature and stable. We work with one main sort of importer in the UK. He has our pipeline forecasts for the next 3-6 months. And we have stock in Rotterdam, stock in Liverpool, and stock on the water at any one time. So from a panel perspective, yeah, we're good. Cabling is quite straightforward. We have a significant amount of that in stock, but again, it's easily available. The things, again, being open and honest, which is the way that we're trying to be. Inverters are starting to become a bit of an issue, and we're buying up front as many inverters as we can to make sure that clients don't get hit by any sort of delays because of equipment. So I think, Tony, in your warehouse, we may have a little space with quite a few inverters tucked in one corner.
I think you've got a few, and I think we've got a lot more due at the end of this month, February, for the jobs we've got coming up. I also went to the solar show, the solar and battery storage show with Gary back in, I don't know, I think it was October. There was an issue with inverters at the time, mainly caused through the chip crisis that's been going on for 18 months. But the sort of the consensus of opinion was in the new year that will start to become easier. I think it was Huawei weren't making inverters for a while, and that was sort of putting undue pressure into a world market. But if what we were told at the time is true, that should now be an improving picture. Once the DNO RAMs and the rest of the assessments have been done and approved, when could you start the installation?
Given that everybody's on board and we've got a good team at the client from an onboarding point of view, and we've done our initial sort of startup conversations, we can generally be on a roof in a couple of weeks. So we'll need some time to gather equipment, get teams together, and get on site. But after DNO and we've had the purchase order, of course, and the customer's paid the deposit, we can be on the roof in a couple of weeks.
And I think what's worth mentioning here is, unlike a lot of contractors, we work with a client for quite a long period of time, so we see these things coming. So we've already got an ear to the ground as to when it might be. Yes, we have to wait for building surveys back, but they would normally be done in plenty of time. So yeah, we'd normally be talking about an installation date even necessarily before some of the things have been agreed and completed. Yeah,
if the client's given us really good indications that this is going to move forward, we will book time ahead to give us that flexibility when we do sort of push the button, as it were.
Final question then for today, Ian. In case we want to increase the PV array in the future, how could that be done? Could we just install next to the existing inverter, etc., etc.?
Okay. Simple answer is yes. It can be increased. They're basically modular. The actual connection to the building would depend on what was there already, but in working on the best possible scenario, there's additional spare ways in the distribution board we can use, and there are connection points on the inverters, and we may need to install a couple of extra inverters depending on the system size increase. But yeah, it's entirely possible. You can go from 150 to 300 kilowatts, given that you've got the roof space and the space for the inverters. And of course, the DNO tells us we're good to do that.
So you can go through the same process again if you need to put another one alongside. Sorry, you'd need to get DNO approval anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And you can either wire into the existing one there or put another inverter next to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, that's all for the questions for January. All that's left for me to do is to thank my industry expert, Ian, for all your knowledge today. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks for the invite.
No problem. I would like to thank Kyle Swindles, as ever, the producer and marketeer extraordinaire, for all his help putting the podcast together. Thank you, Kyle. And as my daughter constantly reminds me to say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell, whatever that means. I am Tony Gresty. That was the Solar Panel Podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, goodbye.